Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Psalm 13, we find the psalmist suffering in the worst kind of way. There were several things that were going on in his life that were mixed together that came to formulate a very distressing situation. For one, he felt like the very one who could save him, the very one that he could trust in, and he would say the only one that could save him, had forgotten him. In verse 1, it says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" To feel as though the only solution, the only person who could bring about the solution, we might say, has forgotten him. Time had passed, a very long time had passed, apparently, at least in the psalmist's eye, and it felt as though the very God that he trusted had forgotten about him. But then there is the length of time that makes it even more difficult. And he says, "How long will you hide your face from me?" Apparently, a long period of time had passed. And when a person is going through a hardship and a trial, it doesn't have to even be a very long time for it to feel very long. And in this particular case, perhaps it was very long. It's suspected that maybe this is David during the time of Saul, and he was persecuted by Saul for a very lengthy amount of time. But nonetheless, anyone who's in a difficult trial, who's in a hard place in life, even just a few days can seem like a very long time. But nonetheless, that would add to the distress to the psalmist that a long period of time had passed, which makes things difficult. We can endure a trial for a short amount of time. If it just lasts for, say, 30 minutes or an hour, we just kind of bear through it and we get through it, and then we come out on the other side and we're okay. But when the trial lingers and goes on for a lengthy period of time, that adds to the hardship. But then he also was in a distressing situation because of external problems. He says, "How long will my enemy exalt over me?" In other words, how long am I going to be oppressed? If this is David talking about Saul, perhaps he's wondering, how long is Saul going to have the upper hand over me? And so he had some external things in his life that was causing this distress and was making it all the more perplexing. But to make it even more difficult, he not only had external problems, he had internal problems as well, because these external things had seeped into his very soul and produced sorrow. He says, "How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all the day?" And that's when a trial becomes really difficult. It's when it's able to seep into our innermost being. As long as a trial is external to us, and as long as we can continue to have joy and peace and happiness in our heart, we can endure a lot of difficult things. If we're happy and we're joyful and we have a flat tire or something like that, but yet we maintain a joyful heart and we just kind of go with the flow, even though something unpleasant has happened to us, it's not really that difficult of a trial because our heart is still intact, our heart is still joyful, so on and so forth. But boy, whenever a difficulty actually makes its way into our heart and actually begins to pull us down into despondency and despair and anxiety, fear, and sorrow, that's when a trial becomes real. That's when it becomes extremely difficult. And the psalmist is dealing with this as well. Not only the external problem of having his enemy exalting over him, but also the internal problem of the sorrow that was produced as a result of this. And so this is a difficult situation altogether. To feel like the only person who can bring you a solution to your problem has forgotten you, the fact that the trial is lasting a very long time, the fact that the trial is not only an external difficulty that you're dealing with, but one that has leaked into your soul internally and produced sorrow, this has all the makings for despair, despondency, depression, and so on and so forth. But the psalm takes a turn. He begins to pray to the Lord about his, about his situation. He says, "Consider and answer me, O Lord, my God. Enlighten my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death, and my enemy will say I have overcome him. and my adversaries will rejoice when I am shaken. So he's taking the problem to the Lord. He's a little concerned why the Lord was taking so long to answer his prayer, but that didn't stop him from praying further. He continued to pray, and should be an encouragement to us when we find ourselves in similar situations. Even though it might seem as though the Lord has forgotten us, even though it seems like the trial is going on for a very long time, we just continue to pray, continue to bring the problem to the Lord, continue to entreat him in the situation. But not only that, continue to trust him. In verse 5 it says, "But I have trusted in your loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation." Still, he was placing his trust in the Lord, even though it had been going on a long time, even though it seemed as though God had forgotten him, he was still trusting in God. And then he says in verse 6, "I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me." He chose to sing. He chose to rejoice in the Lord and to remember the wonderful ways that God had dealt with him and to respond in the situation in that way. And that is very therapeutic, very helpful when we find ourselves in the times of distress, hardships, and sorrows. To be able to find a song in the darkness, to be able to find a song that sings about the way in which God has dealt with us in such a wonderful way. And if we don't have anything else, we could look to the cross and see how God has dealt bountifully with us through Jesus Christ and has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places. And that can bring a song to our heart, even though our hearts might be sorrowful at the moment. And we can even think of the particular times in which God has worked in our lives and has dealt bountifully with us, and bring a song of joy and rejoicing before the Lord in that. And it can really change our whole perspective, and it can change our whole response to the distressing situation that we're in. The psalmist here seems to be responding in the right way. This is he's struggling in the worst kind of way, but he just keeps praying to the Lord, keeps trusting in the love of God, keeps rejoicing in the salvation of God, and then he says, "I will sing to the Lord," and because the Lord has dealt bountifully with me. What a great example we have through this psalm, and something that we can follow during those difficult times. So hopefully we can be benefited by this, whether we're currently in a difficult situation or we just kind of keep it with us until we enter into a difficult hardship. But either way, it should be beneficial to us. And so with that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.